Okay, thank you for joining. We do have more than 4 people. I'm quite excited about this. So we already started, but we're gonna recap. We had a session on Friday where we have talked about what we want to do, and we've already taken some decisions. We're gonna have a company which is called, what was it? Not Walk Walk. Step. A telco company, which will have an incident, and we were just talking about how many people can we get, because we will need at least maybe 10 people to do this exercise, because we will need different teams and lead people for each team who are experienced in that team area, and then all the other participants will be randomly allocated to those teams to work with the lead. And that's where we're at.
So how many people do we think we need as a minimum to make it viable? I mean, you're not going to have a one-to-one, so I'd say at least 3 people in each team, wouldn't you?
Wow. Yeah, that would be great.
We can keep down the number of teams quite easily. So that's not necessarily a problem, but that would mean a minimum of say 9 people plus moderators, and that would be 3 teams.
So just going through the teams, there's a kind of management sales team, there's an internal ops sec team, and there's a external attacker. Is that right?
In this case, the external would be more ICO media than attacker. Okay. So it would be the regulator.
Okay.
So with each scenario, each month, we will have to have a pre-meeting to decide on the teams. So for this one, there is no attacker, because the attacker will be a script kiddie, one teenage guy or girl. Yeah. So we don't really need a whole team for them.
Yeah, the attacker's predetermined this time. They've breached, they've got data, they're going to share the data to show off because they're in lockdown rather than at school and therefore extremely bored, and so they found this SQL injection on your website.
Is there a ransomware element to it, or is it just straightforward script kiddie?
Straightforward script kiddie, and okay. The complexity comes more in this one from regulator, ICO, and also, I mean, potentially the script.
Maybe the CEO as well. CEO's communication skills.
Could be. We could have the script kiddie not release the information straight away, but hold it back until a certain point and see what happens, see what sort of comms go out.
So we're talking about this type of company. Previously, it was kind of business to business sale. This is about end consumers. So yep. We've got an end attacker, which is kind of a script kiddie, but you've also then got, how you're going to work in the scenario, the incoming, because that tends to be then you probably need to have a call center relaying the fact that all the lines have gone dead, or it's the board is on 8 hours delay or something.
Yeah. So the 5 potential teams that we put down were technical, management, regulator, and/or media. They could be separate. They could be lumped into one. Customer, which could also be lumped in with media, if necessary, and compliance and legal team internally.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm probably missing some. I wrote technical, management, customer,
legal,
compliance, and legal. What was the 5th one? I missed.
Regulator / media.
But just thinking about how that would normally work is you would have a call center in Meltdown taking in consumers ringing up or making GDPR requests.
Yeah, and you'll get the ambulance chasing lawyers pulling together a class action lawsuit, but that's off the back of the customer.
Yeah. So rather than having a team of 2 million customers, you could just have, if you put the call center in as one of those teams, and the call center could be really relaying back all the different bits of feedback, couldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, the call center probably should be part of the DS, because that's where you're exactly going to put some of those injects in through. I don't think that needs to be a player per se. The one that's missing for me, and you might want to put it either with compliance and legal or separate, is the communication stroke marketing team.
Yep.
Is that going to be with the management?
Well, so often they're not, because, sorry, James, you called out management. For me, the management are the sort of the directors, the decision makers.
Yeah, the ones who direct the other teams. That I think that's an important thing to always have separate, same as technical, because those are two areas of expertise that are very clearly defined and have very clear responsibilities, or should have. So if there's confusion between them, the whole thing breaks down, which is ideal because then you learn more.
And they're the people you really want to target with this, because at the moment there's people who understand security, but you want to get the companies who understand the impact of security.
Yes, and somewhere in there, I mean, I've seen this done both for real, but also in practice. Somewhere in there, you need to have the person who wants to be the spokesperson, as opposed to Joe to be the spokesperson. So yeah, they've got to have a flair for it, and that probably is not the CISO, and it's probably not the CEO in the first instance. But yeah, I'm kind of thinking about how I would play this, not necessarily where your Friday call went, because apologies, I've missed that.
It's fine. This is an evolving process and an evolving system. It's an approach rather than anything else.
Yeah, okay. No, I get that. I'm making a deduction here, but it sounds like Talk brought up to date.
Might possibly be slightly inspired by that, and the fact that that's a scenario I am familiar enough with to make sure there's realistic responses from all of the inputs.
The names have been changed to protect the guilty, yeah?
Yep.
Yes, no, look, absolutely. But I think, there, but for the grace of God, go an awful lot of outfits.
I was literally hired by one of the other outfits on the back of the Talk attack. So they're well aware of that.
Makes sense. No, absolutely. I have heard a very good briefing on this from the PR lead at Kaspersky, off the back of some of their issues over the last couple of years. If we wanted to, I'm going to set the scene. I'm trying to, and I can dig his name out, but they actually do quite a good summary of things to think about. I saw it done at a SASIG event.
It might be interesting to do that at the end of the session.
Well, I was just thinking that actually, James, yes, indeed, or indeed, and in the real world, this is what happens.
Yeah.
Do we have the kind of play-by-play how they reacted to it, or what they should have done?
It was not so much. It was not so much what I would call a tactical play-by-play. No, it was the strategic things they had to put in place. So the two events that drove it were when Eugene Kaspersky's one of his children was kidnapped. I think was the way it started. And then the second one was when they were responding to US allegations that they were just a front for Russian Federation spies. So there was an individual driver, if you will, i.e. the CEO, and then there was an attack on the business from what was effectively a nation state, and how they handled the two of those. I don't want to steer this down that route, but that was what was at the back of my mind for bringing it to your attention.
I mean, I'd love to do a full one with multiple nation states, but
yeah, hang on. Let's work up to that.
Need people for that.
Yeah, let's work up to that.
Nick knows what I'm talking about. 30, 40 people running different nation state cyber operations.
We just wait for Trump to do it anyway.
They're already doing it, let's be honest.
I think somebody might have just had another stab at Stuxnet 2 in Iran.
Yep, not as subtle as the first time.
No.
Bit
Well,
more blatant.
it might even have been a straightforward kinetic attack, looking at the photographs. Sorry, I don't mean to sidetrack.
No, that's not going to increase cybersecurity budgets, though.
No, not trying to. Getting off track. Sorry, Didar.
No, that's fine. I think it's finding people is as important as the scenario itself. So I think we will set up an Eventbrite with James, guess, and
Yep.
we will, but we need to choose a date. So
Okay, so
gonna
that
open
was
Slack. Secure by scenario. Okay, so we have within July, we have 14, 15, these days are all in July. Basically, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 8 p.m. or sometime over Saturday or Sunday. And currently, we have lots of ties of 2 votes for many of the dates. Does everyone have access to Slack?
So can
Yeah.
I suggest that we do a date during office hours?
No,
Okay.
not in office hours. It's 8 p.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Saturday, Sunday sometime.
I've not got a problem being available for it in office hours so long as I've got enough notice.
Yeah, the reason I was going to say because I can bring a bunch of people from Glasgow, so because we can do this exercise. You know, I can put as part of my cybersecurity awareness strategy, right? But that would need to be done over office hours.
Yeah, it's a bit much to ask people to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want a good time, would be from 4 to 6, something like that, on Wednesday.
How many people could you bring from Glasswall?
Probably 20, 30, 40.
Sure.
30.
It might
Yeah.
be worth just doing a separate one for Glasswall to test it out if you're willing to do that, because that's
Yeah.
enough people to run something, and I can make the time to do it, and I really want to see a test of it.
Yeah,
So
that's a good idea.
I know the CISO there, so sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Denise.
Oh no, then pick another date. Cool. So let's do that. You guys pick another date that we can do publicly, and then actually, Greg is here, right?
Yeah.
There you go, Greg.
Yep.
You picked it for Glasswall.
Sorry?
You picked the date for Glasswall.
Oh, God. Now, how quickly do we want to do this?
These are some options, but for Glasswall session, you would choose one Wednesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Either the 15th, 22nd, 29th.
I think the 22nd we would do it. Hopefully, give everybody enough time to prepare.
Okay. Hmm. 22nd for then we would aim the real thing to be after that one.
okay, so let me just 22nd for the Glasswall one. And I'll come up with another scenario, which will hopefully throw Dinis, because I've got an idea for it, which might be much better fitted.
No, I think we should do the same scenario, but public.
I mean, effectively, you know, the thing is that you get to use Glasswall for playtesting. And then, you know, and it's kind of, I think it's because of the nature of a lot of the people, you'll probably get some good feedback when you kind of say that's what you're actually doing at the end, just by the number of games players that are in the company.
I'm just wondering if we could do the Glasswall one as something a bit more fitted to the Glasswall platform.
So what was the scenario you guys were talking about? Was it something to do with
Talk. It's Talk.
Well, you know, that's still relevant, right? So a compromise via an application security, right? But you know, we got that. Like we got email platform, right? That has customer emails, you know, that has multi-tenants. So you know, a compromise of that could cause lots of problems. Now, look, I think we trying to get that sorted out. And what I like about this structure is that it's always going to be a bit different, right? Because it always depends on how the other side react, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think what we need is to have that good set of the parallel stories, so that we can keep that consistency within the story, right?
Okay, 2 step scenarios then. I'll rethink the attacker side, because it might be good to have them a bit more active if we're running it twice, so that we get some variation.
Sure.
Is the idea here we end up with a library of these kind of playbooks and scenarios that people can use?
That's the hope, yeah. Great.
So do we have I mean, you picked step as an example, but people could take that and moderate it. And then the Kaspersky one is the idea that we've got, what are the other types of scenarios you're looking at?
That's the problem. There's quite a broad choice, so you could pick almost anything and run it. It doesn't even have to be specific to cyber. But to be honest, if we picked the top 10 most common cyber attacks, OWASP top 10 would not be a bad one to go with, except that most of them you don't have a persistent attack. So you don't have the red team playing alongside.
No, I tell you what, one that would be really key to do is the compromise of your proxy. And I wonder when that would ever happen these days, right? Remote code execution on your proxy that compromises the internal network. I'm being ironic here. I'm assuming you guys heard the news about F5, right?
Yeah.
Ouch.
So that's an interesting one, right? Because if you think about it, that is remote code execution and Java execution, I think, directly on an internal device, right?
Yep. DNS hijack is always a fun one.
Yeah, but like these things, you know, my understanding is if these F5s, right? These are the proxies, right? So you see all the traffic.
Yeah.
So theoretically, you should be compromised.
Well, it's the devices, isn't it? It's big IP spread all around the world, isn't it?
Yeah, well, but also internally, right? So think about it. Like, you know, people are saying, oh, it's just the device outside the internet. But how many of those, if you're on an internal network, right?
And Palo Alto as well.
Well, did Palo Alto have the same thing?
It's another 10 out of 10 CVSS bug.
I know, it's proxies. And actually, that one is a top 10, right? I saw the exploit today, right? The F5, I think, was a path transversal. It was literally //// find an executable on the OS, bang. You guys remember NIMDA? What was it? The IAS one?
IAS?
Becky, that's going back a bit.
Yeah.
2003?
Yeah.
Something
But that
like
was the same thing.
I was in high school back then.
Stop it. Don't make me feel any older.
We're not older, we're seasoned.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Yes.
Didar, you're a script kiddie then, were you?
Yeah, I didn't have any idea what cyber was when I was in high school.
Oh no, did we then? We didn't call it that then.
I was playing drums when I was in high school.
Cool.
Cool.
Date. Which date? This is crucial.
Well, how many? What's the dates that you got most consensus on? Do you have like 2 or 3?
So we have only 3, which is 22nd again, 8 p.m. But that's gonna be not a wise choice because we're gonna have the Glasgow one on that evening. So any day after the 22nd, we have 25th Saturday, 26th Sunday, 28th Tuesday, 29th Wednesday. They all have 2 votes. So
Actually, if you want, we could probably do the 21st, the Monday.
Yeah. I mean, I think as a principle, it's
That's
you're
right.
probably going to get more participation if you don't do it at the weekend.
So I'm saying you can if you want, you can do the 22nd public, and I can probably squeeze. What do you reckon, Greg? Monday, like
Tuesday.
3.
21st is Tuesday.
Oh, then 20th. Sorry.
20th.
20th.
Yeah.
But I think James has something for Mondays.
Yep, I'm not available Mondays.
Okay. Then.
Although, having said that, let me actually check the 20th because I'm not available most Mondays. No, I could do the 20th.
Cool.
Yeah, because we can do 3 to 5, right, Greg? I don't think there's anything major going on usually then, right?
Can't think of anything now.
Yeah, Monday 3 to 5, I think would be good. It's also the beginning of the week.
Yeah, that's fine. Monday 3 to 5 is a good time.
Yeah, and then we can do the Wednesday, right? The other one you wanted at the date you guys like, 8 o'clock. And then it's the same week. There's still momentum.
Yeah.
Right.
So 20th for the not closed, but the glass wall one.
Well, look, I'll make an open invite, right? It's just
Yeah.
that the Glasswell guys have less of a choice not to attend.
Which is always useful. So 20th for the open glass wall one and 22nd for the public one in the evening.
Yeah.
Does that give us enough time to learn any lessons and do something about them between the two?
Yeah, I think so.
It depends how adaptive we're going to be.
Okay.
I mean, since we've only got the basic briefings and the team briefings that are going to be handed out, to be honest, if we have the same moderators for both sessions, they're going to learn the lessons from it.
Yeah, and they can wing it on the second one. Oh, sorry, what am I suggesting?
The whole point is winging it. I'd love to get an improv class involved in this because I think they do really well. They just need the technical expertise to back up their improv
Alan,
side.
Can we convince that guy? What's his name? That's a comedian that who knows a bit of security that sometimes does those events that we used to go. What's his name?
Bennett Aaron.
Yeah.
That was a good call.
He's pretty funny, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yeah.
You have a field day with this one.
Can you write their name in the chat window?
Yeah, I will do. Hang on a sec.
Well, you're sharing your screen and it's being recorded.
Yes, I know. So this is notes from the previous sessions. I'm just looking to see if we want to use any of these. So we have talked about Lockheed Martin's game thingy, whatever that was, showing controls and impacts. Do we want to use it? Is it an it? Is it? I have no idea what it is. Do you remember what this was?
Well, we have a decent set of materials from the last one. You guys saw those slides I published on ransomware. I've added them to the end. Let me get the link.
And how is the GitHub coming along?
Slowly, I think is the appropriate term. So it's there, there's some stuff in it, and there will be more stuff in it. But at the moment it's slow because a lot of this is going to be coming out of running these scenarios rather than going in.
Didar, could you share, because we got those materials, right? If you go to that slide share, if you go to slides, in fact, there's some good stuff on it in terms of how to react, right? Actually, we're not doing ransomware anymore, right? Are we doing ransomware?
This one
no.
is not ransomware.
Yeah, we're doing a breach which has happened, so they've already got the data.
GDPR.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you want to go like to slides, probably 50 or 40, something like 45. And
Oh no.
you can move at the bottom.
How do I do it? Oh,
Yeah, that.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So no, keep going. You'll see it. Yeah, that one. So
Cards.
yeah, see. So what I've done was I said, let's go back one. I basically said, look, here you go. That's the rules. Multiple teams, gameplay of multiple rounds. Each team needs to decide what to do. Instant scenario, and then we start to synchronize actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you got event players that we defined, and then I talked about the scenario, what got compromised, which is the next one. Yeah, I'll let him in. And then what was compromised, and then what I just walked them through was the steps that the attacker did, because I got the slides for it. So if you go to the next slides, then it was about the red teams and the moves, right? It would have been cool to actually. I'm not sure. Did you guys capture the? I didn't see the other teams. The outcomes. So this is the ones that
Sure.
I captured from.
Not many of the teams have had it written down.
No, most of them were verbal only, but I think for the next one, getting some sort of collaborative slide together.
You see what I mean, right? You see, like you have like a set of moves that you can do, right? Then you can react more consistently, right, across the board, and it's almost like a game of chess, right? In a way, it doesn't even matter. The moves are sometimes the same after multiple rounds. The question is how people react to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could actually take the moves from your red team one and run them against a completely different set of people if you didn't have a red team.
Yeah. But I remember the other, there were some really good comments, right, from the other teams, right? So it would be good to try to capture that.
I mean, is that something you can kind of build in to try and capture some of this as they actually go along with what they're actually doing, so it becomes much easier to?
So there's a thing in certain types of games where you have a move sheet, which is basically just a template for putting down information like that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it seems to me that there's, from the red team there was a pretty good, almost like quite a good example of kind of thing of a template there, which kind of, might get that more consistent view.
Yeah. I mean, It's annoying. Normally, I'd say piece of paper or whiteboard, but I don't know if Google Forms we could just knock together a template and say put your move in through that, or if there's some other way to do it that might be better.
I was going to say, James, have you kind of thought about what the pack is? We've got the cards, we've got the kind of brief, we've got the roles, and we've got the random allocation.
Diagram. Yeah. So
I mean, it'd be good to chuck this in a document. Here are the pieces, because then people can orientate themselves around it. I mean, it's great to have it in a deck, but just as a kind of like almost like teaching materials. You know, here's the pack.
Yeah.
So you've got.
If you look at things like thread modeling, right, then, you know, what would be good is to almost have assets, right? So assets are a type of cards, resources, another type of cards, you know, business entities, you know, kind of the components. Like if you look at this, there's already a number of components that almost depends on what that is, right? And then even the countermeasures are a kind of card, isn't it?
Yeah, I think when we first spoke about this, we came up with asset, tools, resources.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
And I actually thought once there's been a few scenarios and we've got an idea, you could have a scenario board where you just lay out the company or each particular one based on resources.
If you add actions, you've got it covered. Look, assets, tool, resources, actions. So what we did on that red team was basically actions.
Yeah. Yeah, the actions really should be down to the players.
Yeah, so the decision to change the root keys, which then cuts us off, that was an action.
Yeah, and then you have actions that are taken by players, right? But I think it helps to have a set of actions. And I think the interesting thing is some actions will be allowed or disallowed or enabled or disabled by some of the previous actions, right? Or some of the assets, isn't it?
Well, that's your decision tree, isn't it? Where some of the options go. But we said we're going to start not having it so any conditional logic to make it very simple.
You're always going to end up in the graph, man.
Yeah, but you can build the graph from the decisions people take rather than directing the decisions with the graph.
I was thinking more like Monopoly, where you turn over a card. Because I mean, the randomness thing we talked about last time was just having pick an option and it just comes up with the next card, don't you? It doesn't need to be, a huge amount of systems behind this, does it?
No, you can just play it through. I mean, we could do a choose your own adventure book, but that seems a later project.
What I really liked about the last session was that call and response, right? Like you come in and you say, look, we done X, Y, Z. And then you guys goes, oh no, we detected this IP address and now it's from Ukraine and whatever that thing was, right? So I feel that's what makes this model a bit more interesting, which is, it depends. I think the moderators play an interesting game because I think the moderators can control the temperature of the game, but also allows the participants to arrive at their own conclusions, which is kind of what the point is, right? The point is to let the participants arrive to those actions themselves.
See, what would make this really impactful is at the end of the scenario you've run through, whatever it is, you say, well, you've run through it, this is what happened. And if it's related to a real incident, a bit like, Dinis, you said about the F5 or about talk or whatever the actual example is, you can hammer home what the financial impact was,
Yeah, absolutely. That would be quite good.
So, I mean...
And actually what was interesting, and I thought you were going to go there with your comment, was you'd also be interesting to mention that their decisions prevented other scenarios. Do you know what I mean? So it's also very interesting to say, look, if you hadn't done A, B, C, then the attackers would have done this. So that was on their card, but we chose not to go down that path, right? Because you have that.
Yeah, because one of the big assumptions that people always make is that the attackers actually knows more. You were talking, I remember, Dinis, when we were working together at Photobox about how they got access they had the keys to the castle, but they just were messing around in some remote subsidiary instead of going right to the center.
Yeah, Yeah, that's what happens a lot, right? Is you dodge a missile and you don't even realize, right? Is that your security model is based on the attack on luck.
You assume they're better than they actually are.
Yeah.
Never assume the attacker is better than your own IT team.
Unless it is your IT team.
Yeah.
Even then, don't assume your IT team know anything about your network.
Yeah. So Alan, so you're saying the moderator should be the puppet master, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, right? I think, you know, if you look at this, right, I view the point of these exercises is to make the participants think, right? Is to get them exposure to those decision points and those hard compromises that you have to do, right? So the point of this is to create a scenario that it's not too far-fetched, but it's as real as possible as the people in front of you.
Yeah, because one of the main things the moderator has got to do is keep an eye on the time, such that the activities are happening according to the master plan, such that you actually get to the end of the scenario and keep driving the timeline.
Yeah.
And also picking it up if it's starting to lose its momentum and everyone's getting bored, to inject a bit of pace to it.
Yes, though I think if it's only a 2-hour session, they shouldn't have time to get bored.
And just talking about the mix of people that, if you were briefing people as to do this, we're not just talking about security people doing this, are we? We're trying to involve a wider mix.
And anyone and everyone. I mean, part of the point of the moderators is also to balance the difficulty. So if you're moderating one particular team and it's obviously non-technical people, but they're meant to be the technical team, that's where you start putting help in.
Yes.
I think that was the point, wasn't it, about having at least one person or the leaders of the teams that kind of have a bit of knowledge about that area, so you've got at least they've got some hope of actually being able to move forward.
And also from the first one we did, having one person who sits apart from the whole thing and sort of runs the narrative, so acts as an adjudicator. The moderators can come to them and say, my team have just done this, what happens?
Yeah.
And they can also inject some wild cards, couldn't they?
Yeah.
So James, that's why. Sorry, and I'm going back to my military. That's why we have a high con or they have a high con and a low con. The low controller is the one handling all the I'm going to call it the nitty-gritty, the detail, and then the high con is the person or the group of people keeping an eye on the overall objectives that can make that call when somebody does something unexpected.
I'm stealing that terminology because the only terminology I've had to work with is head ref and ref, and high con and low con sounds a lot better.
Linesman and ref, yeah.
Yeah. So forgive me, but I still think of it as the DS pink. So it's the directing staff pink, which is the right answer. That's the ideal play, but things never go to plan. Particularly if you've got both technical and non-technical people in the teams, they will do something completely unexpected. They will try to respond in a way that you haven't predicted.
Well, they definitely did in the first one we ran.
Right.
We were not expecting.
They don't know there's a script. They don't know there's a script.
We were not there wasn't a script. It's fine. There was a scenario brief. The script emerged as we went along.
I mean, that's the way these things develop. But when you start running multiples of these, you will get that left field, that black swan individual or black swan team who just do something unexpected.
Well, that's what keeps it interesting, right? That's real world, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I enjoy these so much, because they never run to form.
Yeah.
From a wargaming perspective, the terms for that would be the control team, but it would be the umpires and the head umpire or the lead umpire. And just to reiterate what's been said elsewhere is, the sort of person in charge of pace and injects is the head umpire. Like, the other umpires can make suggestions and, depending on discussions beforehand, can freewheel a bit. But really, for the overall pace, you want one person in charge of that. Especially, as you say, the beauty of this kind of game is you can modify it to player energy and knowledge. which is really where sort of an experienced sort of head umpire comes into this and can judge that accordingly. But just one point on that is depending on why you're doing this and depending on who you're doing it with, it's arguably okay to let players get a little bit bored if that means they put their guard down or think they've dealt with the scenario. So don't be afraid to let people think it's okay and the next turn's not for 15 minutes and right now I'll take that coffee break or grab a sandwich, or the discussion goes off into another area, which of course is then when the head umpire brings in a sudden inject out of the usual turn, pace and order to make everybody realize that the real world doesn't work at this one decision per 30 minutes rate. And you need to, if you can get ahead of the pace of things rather than waiting for it to catch up to your preferred speed of thinking.
No, that's a great call, Nick. That's one way of tripping up the overconfident.
I mean, the other thing you can do for controlling the pace is actually give people less time for each turn and to apply that pressure.
I mean, it's quite handy with Zoom where we can use breakout rooms and we can just pull people out of the rooms when we want to and shove them back in.
That's good. Yeah, especially with this, it's something to teach at the advanced levels and this is where I suspect Alan knows more than I do, is the whole idea of operational tempo, as in if you can do this fast enough, if you can make your decisions fast enough, you'll basically get ahead of your opponent. So that's a good thing to teach people, and especially if it comes with practice. So like in the fourth time they play this, even if it's a completely different scenario, people are just making obviously faster decisions than they were the first time they played this. Let them do that. Let turns go at, say, every 15 minutes rather than every 30 or something like that, as long as every team in the game is happy with that pace of working.
Well, if they're not,
that's a good call.
You can pick the faster teams if the other teams aren't, and throw in more complications for them. They can learn more as they go.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I would say let's just not let the attackers do that, or else it can be overwhelming. But I think if the defense team can move faster, then that's a massive success story, right?
Oh, I completely disagree conditionally, because I think it's something a lot of people miss in this, is the ability to, especially if you're in some kind of interactive compromise, if you can make faster decisions than your enemy, and actually from a technical perspective, if you're being attacked by someone better than you, but you can think and react faster than them, you'll have an advantage in the conflict anyway. Like imagine playing chess, but every three turns, you get to make 2 moves, not 1, because you're just playing that quickly.
Yeah,
it's that kind of advantage, but I'm being really conditional and I'm taking a very...
So I think that's what I'm saying. I'm saying just let's not give that hand to the attacker, right? Let's not make the attacker the one that can play 2 games, right? 2 moves. I think the point of this is to promote the defense, right? So the point that I really like the idea that the success story of these events is that by the 3rd or 4th event, run of this, the decision-making time gets faster and faster and faster, right? From a defense point of view. Does that make sense?
But the attacker you can bog down with other things anyway, unrelated to the defense. You can throw obstacles at anyone if you need to.
Yeah, I mean, especially in this, if the red team understands why, if the red team first of all is a human player, and if they understand why they're doing this, they should also be okay with you saying, well, you'll win the game, but we'll finish an hour early. No one will learn anything.
Exactly.
And you're going to break it. And everybody's working towards the same aim. So basically you can say to them, well done, but we'll discuss that in the after action report. But let's calm that down so that everybody gets the most out of this exercise.
Well, that goes into the iterative thing that you mentioned. Was it on Friday or was it at one of the previous discussions? Because you can say to the attacker, well done, you've just found essentially an end scenario that benefits you. we're not going to play that one out because that would end it here, and so the other teams would learn nothing, make a different decision.
Yeah, can you do that again within the time limit? Can you win one game twice in the same play of the game
with different actions with a different route?
Which is when it's all sort of umpire social skills and sort of player management, and if you're running this more formally, like getting the stakeholders buy into that kind of thing, and also casting, as in who you put on which team at the beginning. So you need a red team that's happy to be told, yeah, you've won, don't ruin the day, let's keep going.
Yeah, well, I think that the red teams here, right, should be made of security professionals who fundamentally should be aligned with the idea of educating the users, right? So this is not a kind of a winner takes all kind of exercise. The point of this is not to win and destroy as much as you can. The point of this is to teach and educate as much as we can, right?
Yes, definitely. Also, again, it depends, and this is where I'm not sure how vague we want to be, but also sometimes, especially if you've got members of your staff who are like, well, why would I attack this? If you suddenly give them a persona and a motivation and put them in that competitive situation, they suddenly see why their own organization would be attacked. They might think, well, this is not really anything of value. Oh, hold on, I've got all these resources, I've got all this computing power, or I've got all this data I can sell. So don't necessarily just put security people on the red team. But yeah, I do see your point, and it's worth emphasizing, is a human red team especially needs to have everyone's best interests at heart. And as you say, if you're running this kind of exercise, you'd hope the security team are thinking that way anyway.
Yeah. But what we did last time, I think worked quite well, is that we actually have a moderator that represents each team, right, on each group, right? So in a way, they can control the temperature of that, right? So, because that's still the plan, right? So we have one of us with each group, and then that's where we have the back channel between the different, what we call the low team, right?
Yeah. So you've got the low team, and you've got one person sitting as high team to moderate the moderators, really.
I mean, in practice, what we did last time, we were actually acting as in concert. So we did kind of agree with ourselves how we were going to bring in the shocks and what was going to happen. So I think it's really good to keep everyone coordinated. I think those team leaders need to be working in concert, really.
Yeah.
The team leaders need to be running the exercise.
Exactly.
Ultimately.
And then the moderator is able to kind of get, because they're not in the thick of it, they're able to get a read back of what's going on and bring up what could have happened, and then also inject some wild cards.
Exactly.
Yep.
Also, that kind of lead umpire is the final arbiter on, what from a war game perspective tends to be called wizard wheezes, as in someone's had that idea of, as per the scenario you played, like, well, what if we remove all of these certificates? It's someone who can make that ultimate decision, and if there's any discussion or disagreement amongst the players, can it's basically seen as the final arbiter of the way the game runs, of saying, well, this is or isn't possible, or this is or isn't the result, and this is why.
Actually, Alan, you're still on the call. Don't.
I am.
Yeah, isn't there like a really good set of document and rules of engagement on this? Because I was actually reading some of Chance last week. I think it was like a massive disaster on one of the war games that the US did, I think it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, where the guys on the other side kept winning. and the US kept having, the US military kept having to game the system. So they actually...
No, they only, the Van Ripper, legendary Van Ripper won once because he knew how the American Navy would react, and he came up with a strategy that they could not combat. And he basically said, your multi-billion-dollar Navy is all at the bottom of the sea, which is, which did not, which is, exactly as was discussed, was like the point of the red team in their kind of exercise is not to just utterly obliterate the blue team. In that case, it was. It proved the American naval strategy and military strategy wouldn't work. However, the people in charge of the exercise said, no, that's making us all look really bad. There's senators or congressmen or whatever due. No, the ships have magically refloated. We're turning back the clock and all that sort of thing, which is, to be honest, for this sort of exercise, if you're doing it for educational reasons, it's not something to be afraid to do. If you're doing it to show whether you would survive, say, an attack on your F5 load balancers, it's the worst thing to do.
Yeah, but I was thinking that surely there's a already good set of literature and concepts that we can hijack, right? Like that high command, low command, you know, that decision structure. It seemed to me that, you know, they already had to put a lot of thinking on how that would work, right?
I can't quite see what Didar's holding up, but yes, yeah.
Oh,
King's College War Game Society and,
oh, wow,
and
you've got
others.
a copy, Didar.
Yes, it just came today.
Oh,
and
let me know
there
what you
are
think.
so many tools in there that we could use.
Which one?
Yeah.
What's that? What was that today?
This is Nick's book, the Handbook of Cyber War Games.
Yeah,
Ah,
Show me
I
that.
have it on Kindle.
Ah,
Oh, excellent. Yeah, there's I mean, again, I know enough. I know it sounds like I know more about the war games industry than a lot of people in this call, but I don't know as much as the people I know in the industry itself. There's kind of, there are established bodies of practice and established terms and methodologies. And especially, I mean, bearing in mind this is being recorded, there's certainly things we can learn from, but also don't take it for granted that they're correct. And especially as there were a lot to do with military hierarchies and kinetic warfare, whereas what we're doing is relatively different. So as with many different concepts, sort of take what works,
Exactly.
leave what doesn't.
Yeah. I just think that, you know, there's no point in reinventing the wheel when there's something good that we can reuse and get inspired.
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah, absolutely.
But to Nick's point, keep it simple. You can make this very complicated. We don't need to.
Yeah.
Oh, that's something it's taken me ages to learn as from being involved in war games. Yes, is how I've thought about, oh, I'm the cyber expert on a particular war game, so I need to know this and know that and learn this, and I need to have all this reference documentation with me, when actually it's amazing how little you'll have to refer to, and actually how much you know if someone just says, is this possible or not, or what's the chance this will be discovered. So yeah, as Alan quite rightly says, keep it simple and let the players experiment within the framework of the game, rather than giving them sort of a lot of mechanics or a lot of pre-reading. They know enough. Let them experiment. Let them think. Is the point of this kind of war game exercise.
Which is the briefing, the scope of the briefing up front, because again, that's where I've run into problems where people have got hidden stuff in the scope. And I think if you're asking someone who's not expert to make decisions, you give them enough information to make their decisions on.
that's
Cool.
why we were saying we should have like at the beginning of the session, we will give them, like someone else mentioned this, I'm just repeating this, give them 20 points and give them cards that are totaling up to 50, and they choose their own resources and controls with those 20 points they have. And so at the beginning of the game, they choose their controls, and then we give them the scenario, and they might regret their choices. Did that make any sense? Nobody's talking.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah. I still think you could easily grab ISO 27K or NIST or whatever a particular organization uses and say, here are the controls to spend points on.
Well, I mean, going back to that bit about taking real world scenarios. I mean, if you look at the vulnerabilities, I mean, coming out of an ISAC, and then you can say, look, here's a vulnerability, here's where it actually has hit somebody. Then at the end of the exercise, people aren't just learning how to react, but they're also looking at their risk register, aren't they?
Yep.
But that's kind of I think that's a different game, right? Although I think it's an interesting variation of this. And I saw one guy once actually did with security, which was each round you had 20 points, like for a sprint, right? So it's like a sprint thing. So you get 20 points to spend on X. And then there's a scenario, and it depends on what you chose, depends on what happened, right? But I think that's a little bit different, because that means that, for example, each room, breakout room, is almost a self-contained thing, where I think we're going to try to follow the model that we did last time, right? Where each room is a specific actor.
Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't mean that, Dinis. I meant that if you think about what this is going to do for people longer term, they're going to run through this exercise and they're going to come up with some skills. But we also then they need to go back and look at their documentation and their structure and their setup and say, what would have helped us actually respond to this internally last time.
Yeah, so but Didar, going to the example you were saying, I think we can evolve into that game once we have a better decision tree.
Yeah, so I mean, as discussed, that might be a different game altogether, but I think it's really useful. Just like partly, I'm sort of wanting to turn this into like 3 quite obviously separate games, and can we discuss them all separately? But that will just limit the discussions and just generate what's gone before. So I think it's a case of especially considering how what you all do and how smart you are, is keep doing this and see when it starts to break, when it feels like you're trying to get people to play 2 different games at the same time. And then it's a really obvious point of, well, here's something really simple. Like I said, I think in the Trello, sort of here's something simple people can play for an hour around a table that doesn't need an experienced umpire. Whereas here's a narrative game that basically needs someone like James as the head umpire, running it with half-hour decisions, and maybe takes half a day.
Yeah, but this is very valuable. Like, look, I view this as a situation where we'll run a couple of these public, right, in a generic scenarios, where almost I'm getting the team and my internal management and my developers and my the team that from the company to get their heads around the rules of the game, and then I would want to run one closed doors on scenarios that is very specific to us.
Yeah, at that point you're saying
right? Then you really single in the scenarios, but almost by then you need to almost have, it's like a game of football, right? I need first the people to understand how to play it before we really get on with the
yes.
Yeah, you want the framework, then you can take that framework in-house and use it on things that you don't want to discuss openly.
Yeah, because then I can look, okay, here's a scenario with launch service. What happens on this? Because basically it's creating the playbook, right? So what I want is I want to create a playbook. What happens if this happens? But I want to do it in peacetime, not doing it in a freaking incident.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's the way to get to that level. And ideally, and this reminds me of, he said, speaking slowly so he can Google something. This reminds me of the Western Approaches Tactical Unit is a group of, I think, Wrens, basically female officers and staff, who taught anti-submarine tactics in about 1942 as American convoys were torpedoed out of the sea by German U-boats, and a lot of men and resources were being lost. So they gained this and came up with better tactics for the convoys to use. And if I remember rightly, I've yet to read the books, and I'm told there's several films in development. By the end of this, the Western Approaches Tactical Unit were actually gaming convoy situations with radio input as that convoy situation was taking place. So the convoy would radio into the UK saying, we think we've got, say, 3 U-boats, they're at this distance, we think they're going to try this strategy. The tactical unit on their big blue mat basically game this, figure out what kind of strategy would work, and then tell the ships what to do while they're actually out in the Atlantic. So in the same way, if you do that with your company, and that they play this so often, they go through the playbook so often, your company just becomes faster and better and more effective at these scenarios over and over again. The same as a soccer team that practices
Yeah, yeah.
every day, and suddenly when they're on the field in the game, they just outplay the opposition because it's what they do all the time.
Well, and that's called doctrine, right? good old Simon Wortley Maps calls that the doctrine, the things that you have to do that make you better, right? And then you react to the climatic patterns, which the reality, is, and then with the loop, right? You orient, observe.
Oh, exactly that, and you go around it faster as well is the thing, because you don't have to decide what to do, especially depending on the format of your playbook. You just do it because you know it works, because you're familiar with your organization, and because you've played this kind of game in whatever way so often.
But
it's
Nick, I
just
really
what your
like.
organization does.
I think that what you just described now, almost just to frame it, right? I think can we, like, between now and then, just maybe just have a kind of a collaborate on a couple of intro slides for the session, because I think that if we can present almost that as the end goal for this, I think we also help for a lot of people to take it a lot more seriously. I really like that vision that you just described, which is the point of this is to allow organizational for us to make decisions faster and more efficiently, right? And that's, I think, is a really cool sort of vision for why we're doing this. Why are we dedicating these resources? Why are we putting the effort in? What is the goal? And the goal is faster decision making, right?
Yeah, faster and better.
Yes.
Faster or better or both.
Well, it's both, right? But the assumption is that the faster you can make decisions, the more you can recover, right? So yeah, this is all the DevOps thing, right? You fail often, fail fast, right? So even if you make the wrong decision, it's better to make the wrong decision fast and then recover than to keep dithering and not decide, right?
Yes.
So yeah, faster and better, but fundamentally is you can't, almost like, I'm going to say faster, good decisions. That's not that way to say it, right? You want to make good decisions fast, whichever works in English. Because that's what you want, right? And to do that, you need good data. It's that simple, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Right, made a note.
Yeah, let's maybe, we have a Slack channel on the summit for this, right? On Zoom.
Secure by scenario.
Yeah, let's do some stuff. And actually, Adam, you're here, right? So you can help a little bit to collect some of these data and maybe get one of our designers to help a little bit.
Okay.
Because this is worthwhile as investing a bit, because this is part of our education materials, right? And again, everything released on the Creative Commons and all that jazz. All right, gang, I think I'm gonna have to jump out, but this is great. Do you need me? I think I did. I think I need to assign you to the co-host.
Yeah, make me host, please.
You guys gonna stay longer?
Actually, guys, I'm going to drop you. I've got a call in 5 minutes, so I'll catch you later.
Okay.
Thanks.
Cheers.
I've got painkillers wearing off, so I'm going to head off as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to.
Oh,
No, it's fine.
get
All
one
right, guys.
thing.
See you later.
Bye.
Okay, see you. Cool. Then, so we will continue the discussion, I guess, on Slack. Is there anyone who's not on Slack? Greg, are you? Let me just find you here.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain I'm on that OSSS Slack channel, or I mean, not necessarily that channel, but definitely on that within that organisation.
Okay, I just pinged you to the channel and invited you to the channel. Yeah, it's with your Glasswall Solutions account. So
yeah.
Cool. All right then. Thank you so much for joining. We'll keep it rolling, and I will give you feedback, Nick, about the book.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Hey,
Bye-bye.
cheers, everyone.
Cheers.